Okay, so we should be live now. It seems like, let's see if there is anybody yet.
I can see the live marker in the top. So
Yes, so I think we are live. We'll wait for folks to join in. Otherwise, we'll continue with our conversation, and folks will join in. I have a lot of questions for you. So
cool.
for all our guests, it is a great moment of pleasure for me to welcome Tobias Müller from Progile. He's the man behind testresults.io now. Now, surprisingly enough, I don't know about if you know about it or not, Tobias, but testresults.io has been in the conversations, at least in the test chat community, for a while now,
Okay.
because people have been experimenting with a lot of tools. People have been trying, looking for options, trying to play around, and so that's where it caught my attention, and fortunately at the same time Daniela also reached out to me, so our ideas sort of crossed paths, and I was like, yeah, this is what I was looking forward to, and here you are. So
Yeah. Thank you very much for the invitation, actually. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here.
it's my honor, and talking about test automation these days, there are so many people who are talking about test automation. There are so many tools out there. There is, I mean, plenty to choose from. So, but then before I get deeper into the test automation conversation, I would like to know something about what is your story? How did you get started with testing, and how did things happen?
Yeah, that's a weird story. And it's a long, long story, but I will keep it
We
short.
have we have all the time. Please go ahead.
Okay. So how did I start in testing is actually interesting because I am a developer. So I was in a project, I was in charge for a big software project here in Switzerland. And everybody was back then was meant to do it in an agile fashion. That means back then, yeah, you do it in Scrum. And I did one of those projects actually that was for robotics. So to move the arms in a blood analyzer instrument. And at some point in time, I said like, okay, we are at version 0.97. And honestly, nobody ever tested that stuff. It was us developers who tested it on simulators, sometimes on the real instrument, and that's it. And on version 0.97, something strange happened. Somebody started to test it. An actual tester started to test it. And you can say he tested it manually, but in the end, he just tested it. That's it. And he started to run scripts actually with our software on the real instrument. And he did something completely fancy. And he actually crashed the software within 10 seconds. And that
Wow.
was the point where I wanted to meet him actually and said, like, hey, I want to meet this guy and I want to know how he crashed that instrument in 10 seconds. And he showed me that. And I said, like, that's not a use case. He was like moving all the arms simultaneously in all directions that are possible. It's like that's not a use case. And he said, like, yeah, but it might be. So see, that is a problem. Can you fix it? Because that brings stability. And that was actually the beginning of the story. So I met this guy, Wojciech, who was a tester. And he broke my software. But we were successful in the end, and the company asked us to take over a bigger project, actually that is in charge of the whole instruments, not only just the robotics, also scheduling and stuff like that. And the question was like, who do I want to have in my team? And then there was also the question like, who should be the Scrum Master? And back then, actually, I decided like I would love to have this tester, Wojciech, as a Scrum Master, because we need to bring quality into the product. And back then, actually, usually people said like only developers should be Scrum Master because they understand the problems and they can solve the problems and stuff like that. And I said, I don't care. Honestly, I want to have this tester as a Scrum Master because I've worked with him. We were successful. So I want to have him as a Scrum Master. And that is actually what happened. People in the beginning said like, that will never work out. But I did have two seats in management actually that trusted in me. And they said like, hey, if that's what he wants, he gets it. It just shouldn't fail. So you should just be successful. And that is where it started. Actually, he brought in like a completely different mindset. And this was when testing became interesting for me. And afterwards, I worked together with an additional tester, actually. And that is when we decided to rewrite all of the specifications. So we sat down together with management, we sat down together with developers and the testers, and actually the testers were in charge to driving that action. And that is when I came to the conclusion, actually, the best path forward is to include them everywhere. And that is a long story short. It's like that was about 3 years in total that I told you now. So there was some evolution in that, but in general, that is it. And then the journey continued, and that is how I ended in test automation. Is like we evaluated different tools, and we didn't find one that really fit the regulated market, and we found one that we could actually make to fit the regulated market. And back then it was interesting because it was one of the major players in test automation, actually. And it was us who was driving those versions with bug reports, because it seems like, they never confirmed that, but it seemed like they never did regression tests on their test automation suite, which I think is a problem. And that is how I entered testing. Is like, one of my engineers joined me then and said, we can do that better. And that is how I ended up in testing. I actually ended up in testing, how I started my testing career, let's say it like that.
That is quite interesting. And I wonder why you thought, moving the arms of a robot around is not a use case. I would have done the same thing, move the arms around left, right.
But that's the point, isn't it? Like, if you're developing, it's like, you the thing is, you need to move some samples from X to Y, and you need to move some plates, and you need to get the freaking thing to work. It's not like you don't want to break it. It's like you need to get it work first. That's the point. And here, the completely different approach. He said, like, hey, those are the features that are available to me. So if they are available to me, I can use them.
Absolutely. That is actually thinking like the user, and then trying to build a use case on top of it. Now, before I go any further, I want to get this thing off my head. So I've been watching a few ads of testresults.io on TV, on YouTube, on Facebook, everywhere. And there's this famous ad which talks about you can't be trusting your dashboards, right? The dashboard. You know which ad I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So what made you think that we can't trust the dashboards, and what can we do about it?
Actually, you need to watch the video. Actually, you need to register. You need to provide your email address to watch the video. But in short, it's like, it was that talk from Alex that actually made me think about it. And that is what actually we had exactly the same problem in the beginning. Is like, we didn't provide a dashboard to our customers because we said, like, okay, what's the benefit of the dashboard? We didn't see it because either it's all green and everything is fine, or it's all red and it's a problem, or there is some red and it's still a problem. So people only react if there is a problem, and if there's no problem, everything is fine. And that's the problem, actually, because if something is red, you need to explain why. And that is what you actually want to do. And that is, Alex actually opened my eyes to that. Is what you want to have is like a communication channel. Like, you want to have a dialogue with everybody involved, and you want to make everybody aware about the current situation. It's not like those 150 test cases failed today, and now you have the full attention of management and everyone. It's more or less like, it's a bi-directional communication, if you say it in developer terms. It's like, you just need to talk to each other, and that makes a lot more. And he actually brought some good ideas on how you can make the management in your company aware that you are a go-to person, that they should actually seek the discussion with you, that you are a knowledgeable source, that you are also a subject matter expert, because that is something that most of the people don't see. They always talk about, specifically the customers we currently have, is like, they talk about business users as the subject matter experts because they know the program. But on the other side, like, testers know it even better. That's the point, because business users just know their processes and how to go through it step by step because they do it every day. But the testers actually, just use it in the way that it's meant to be, but also use it in the way that it's not meant to be. And it's interesting because, like this blood analyzer that I talked about beforehand, once that was introduced to the market, I mean, you can imagine there were over 1,000 test cases that need to be executed formally in verification and validation on the customer side and stuff like that. It was introduced in the market, and the first customers actually started working with it, and they used it in a completely unexpected way. And I mean, that's reality. And therefore, it's like, so if you have a dashboard, it gives you the false impression of everything being okay, because that's just not the case. And in a discussion with Alex, we actually found out, like, what is the value? Tell me, Bridge, what is the value if there's something red and something green?
Not much, actually. You don't know. I mean, bunch of reds could be false negatives. You never know if they are the right set of problems, or a bunch of greens could be a set of false positives. So you don't know what is what. The reality
that's
is
the
not
point.
there.
And I think you have seen that in projects as well. It's like, if, let's say, like if you have 150 red test cases out of 500, at some point in time, nobody cares anymore. It's just like, yeah, they were always red, and it's fine. We can live without that. And that's not testing.
That's absolutely right. And the fact that you made a point about doing this in the regulated environment where it becomes extremely critical. It could, so for example, healthcare, it could be a case where it could be actually a test which could make or breaks the software which is responsible for saving somebody's life. So you may have a critical situation. So it's very important to have the accuracy, in there, and that's why you're absolutely right. I mean, a bunch of reds or a bunch of greens doesn't really point anything. Well, before I go ahead with my next question, I want the audience to know that that they can shoot their questions. I would be very happy to take their questions, and
Sure.
I of course have my own set of questions, so not to worry on that. So the next thing that I wanted to ask you was, mm, about testresults.io. So how did you come up with the idea of testresults.io with so many tools already existing in the market? What was it that prompted you to do something different and then come up with this whole idea?
Yeah, so I don't want to do much advertising on this channel.
No, that's fine. That's fine. You can talk about it.
But so the idea behind it is pretty simple. I mean, all of us know Selenium, Appium, and stuff like that. It's like, and 90% of those tools out there build an IDE around Selenium or Appium, and you always have the same problems in the end. So now they are coming up with like smart selectors, which in the end is nothing else than weighted properties and stuff like that. So they are finding workarounds for problems that are in those test automation tools. And they are good. They are good. They work. And I mean, millions of users use them every day. So that is brilliant. But we thought about it, and there was one other tool on the market back then, actually, and they got acquired by a large company, which worked differently. It just worked visually. And not like it from ApplyTools, which is great, by the way, as well, for visual comparison. But they actually found a way to automate your software based just on those visual cues. So you select some images, and that is generating actually all of the interaction. And I love the approach. I just found it too complicated in their tool. And that is why we came up with test results. So that was one driver of it, that we said, like, hey, that technique is so brilliant. You can use it on any platform that a user can actually operate with. And the second one is a bit more of a painful story, to be honest, because back then we said, like, test automation is difficult. It's a dedicated task that you can do whenever it's required. But if you do it just randomly, it most of the time it doesn't work. And we had a service called Test Automation as a Service. Those were the times where all of those PaaS, SaaS acronyms actually got buzzworded, and we said, like, we have TaaS, Test Automation as a Service, and wanted to do that for customers. And we did that actually with this tool from the market vendor, from the market leader, and paid those licenses and started to automate for customers. So we had paying customers, which was actually brilliant, and we could afford those licenses. But in the end, as I mentioned, we found those bugs. And that is when I actually noticed that I reported all of those bugs back. I even had a meeting with their CTO back then because they were small enough, but they didn't fix anything. It was like, okay, I paid the license for a year and I will hear back from their sales guy again in a year because I need to renew the license. But I do have those problems now. And my customer is waiting for a solution because I said, like, I will do the test automation for you.
Yes.
And that is when I said, like, hey, there is a difference in who feels the pain, because the customer is feeling the pain, that's for sure, but I'm feeling the pain as well because I have to help my customer to support my customers. But apparently the vendor doesn't feel the pain because they will feel it next time when they come to me and ask for an extension of the license, because I will tell them, no, it's not our tool anymore. But right now they don't feel the pain at all. And that is when we said, like, okay, the second pillar of our system needs to be that we use it ourselves. It's like we still need to provide test automation services, and we need to do that in test results.io, and we need to see if there is any pain in that, if we can make any of those steps easier to do actually for customers. So that is the two reasons for test results.io, why we came up with that. And that also, to do a little bit advertisement, that's what makes us different.
And I quite like some of the things that you do with test results.io. Like you said, a different approach. Uh, Not to get into any specific tool, but I know what different approach you're talking about compared to some of the tools that do similar stuff. So I would let people explore testresults.io and find it out themselves rather
Yeah,
than me spilling the beans here. But and I could
definitely.
see and I could see a bunch of tests running on the laptop behind you. I could see it on the screen. Maybe the tests have stopped now, but I could see stuff going on. So I know that you're coming up with some new stuff. So is there something that you might want to spill the beans on, telling us about some new features that are coming up on testresults.io?
Yeah. Yeah, I can spill the bean a bit about a single feature, actually, not about all, because people ask me about roadmaps, and that's interesting and want to have technical architectures, but that is a bit of a challenge. But there's one feature that we are currently working on that will come beginning of next year, is actually our no-code editor, and everybody will now tell me, no code again. I heard it already, and I'm the first one who tells, like, hey, I don't want to hear about no code anymore. It's just like, no. It's a no-go for me. I fully understand that there's a lot of work to do, and I fully understand that there are not enough skilled people out there. So we need to find a solution that I fully understand, but it's not me that want to use those tools. And but what people love is actually like this click and record. You click somewhere and you just record your test case while you're doing it. But we all that ever did it know exactly that it doesn't work. It's a maintenance hell. After half a year, you will be in maintenance hell for sure. That's a given.
Yes.
And what we actually did is, like, because it's already visually based, we actually take all of those screenshots all the time, and based on that generate a model, and we call it visual twin. So we recreate the whole application based on screenshots, and you can then actually click through your screenshots and record the test case. And that makes it interesting because first, you can automate without having access to the system. So you can automate being on the plane, but that's not the most important use case. The more important one is, like, it is click and record, but you don't click in your real application that we don't understand and might need to guess on what you're clicking on. You're clicking actually on the screenshot that we provided of your application, where we know exactly where the elements are, so we can easily track your flow of how you work through the application. And that is something that is currently in testing, and we try to get that out by beginning of next year. And I hope that is actually that will revolutionize some stuff, because that is what we hear is, like, people want to have this click and record functionality, but they also want to have it maintainable. And everybody's claiming that. I'm completely aware of that. But trust me, in that is that this approach, the visual twin approach, will be completely different.
Yeah. So the click and record has been, of course, in the radar for a bit now. Obviously in English, there's a saying, "What goes around comes around." So we
And
started with record and playback, right? Back in the day
it's
with
exactly like that in IT, isn't it? Like, everything comes back.
yeah. So it is time we see click and record in action, and of course, You're absolutely right. Maintenance is a big challenge.
Yeah,
After a while, you have a bunch of recorded stuff, and then things have changed visually, and then you have no clue. Okay,
yeah,
what's going on and what to change, what not. No,
yeah.
that is quite an interesting feature, and I will certainly look forward to that. But in the
Yeah,
meantime, there is
I
an
guess
audience
all of
question that
us
has
that are, oh, there's a question.
Yes, there is a question that has come up already. And so, could you tell us briefly on Tosca and which tool or framework we can use to upscale in that, and what's the market demand? I mean, so I guess people are already making guesses about what tool it could possibly be. But like to hear from you. What's your thought?
Okay, can you briefly tell on Tosca is like, so what is the question on that? Is my way of thinking on Tosca is it's a good tool, but it's a bit of a tool that is coming into age. Let's say it like that. It works. It has 150 connectors and all of that stuff is brilliant actually. And they also have Vision AI meanwhile. And if you look at that, it works brilliantly. The
And
problem
it
is
is very
just like,
expensive. It's very expensive.
it is expensive, but the problem is in the details. You see exactly that it's a tool from a vendor. And that's my problem with all of those tools. It's like it's from a vendor and they sell you the tool and that's it. And if you look at the demos with Vision AI, you can see that they can identify all of the elements. That's true, but
Yes.
nobody tells you exactly how does the interaction work. Yeah, identifying a Dropbox is pretty simple, but interacting with a Dropbox in a visual way is extremely complex because it can open to the top, it can open to the bottom, it can open from the middle, and there's a selection element. And that is what you don't see in those demos most of the time. And most of the time you also see something like wait 5 seconds. Because we need to wait till the button gets active, so it cannot distinguish between different button states. And that is what I think is a problem. But in general, I mean, I'm pretty sure you can automate all of the problems in all of the test cases in Tosca for sure. I mean, people are using it. From different customers, I hear different stories, but it depends on personal framework. So which framework would you bet on? It's like, first, naturally, I would bet on test results. So that's a given. But besides that, actually, it depends a bit on the market. If you are in front-end testing, like you can use, I would bet on Cypress, to be honest. I also see a lot of buzz on Playwright, and I think Microsoft has a tremendous amount of money behind that to get it right. And therefore, I guess if I would decide now on something else than test results, so I would usually go for Playwright. But again, that is then for web testing and on the other side, if you look at this WebDriver stuff that is around, you can actually test everything. You do have Win32 connectors that you can use to connect to Windows applications. You have all of them. But yeah, if I need to bet on one of those, it would actually. So if it's not test results, it will be Playwright for most of the stuff because stuff is still coming to the web.
Well,
That doesn't give you anything for legacy applications, by the way. That is only thinking in the future is like what is coming next. But for legacy applications, I guess there
but
is no.
Playwright is only. Correct me if I'm wrong here. It's mostly for the web. What
Exactly.
happens when you have What happens when you have mobile in the play?
Yeah, that is that, and there are some vendors out there that I would call out that are doing a brilliant job. But again, I would say like it's either test results SEO or today you have to choose to Appium. That is the thing that you're going to do, and be careful with vendors that use adapters. Like yeah, we already talk about a tool that is using adapters. Actually, the problem is with all of the new technologies. Now you see Flutter is the new kid on the block from Google for front end development. And you can
Yeah.
see that it actually breaks web development because it's pixel based. So if you use the wrong renderer for your web page, you will have a set of pixels that you can test against. And the same is true for mobile. So you should actually use something that either can understand the native technology underneath, or that is actually visually based. And I think that,
So
to be honest, I think that is the future. All of those frameworks will go into the same direction. You see it with Tricentis; they are betting their future on Vision AI. You can see it with Keysight; they are betting their future on vision and also on visual detection. It's us doing it. appli tools is meanwhile also not only screenshot comparison, they also call functional visual testing. That is what we do, and so you see a lot of those trends going into this visual detection stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting with some of those tools that you mentioned. In fact, it was only last week that I was in a conference where, it was quite interesting that the speaker before me was none other than Jonathan Wright, the big eggplant guy
Yeah.
from Keysight. The world knows him. And he spoke about some of the stuff that you spoke about as to how they are doing it in the world of IoT and other stuff with digital twins. And today you are talking about a visual twin. So I think it's the day and age of twins to come about and
Yeah,
and
there's so in private, I guess I can tell you the story how they came up with digital twins. But yeah, it's a nice little story.
Well, okay. Okay, so coming to, we've been talking about AI and AI related stuff. A few months ago, I read an article written by you, and I would like to seek a clarification on that. So you said, I think that the title of the article itself, that, I think you said AI-based test automation or AI-based testing is going to make testing obsolete, something like that. Please clarify.
Yeah, that's simple actually, because people don't get the general idea. So the general idea of AI that like everybody understands is it will be some magic artificial intelligence, or actually some magic intelligence that is even smarter than we are. And what I wanted to point out with that article back then is more or less like, if all of those statements would be true, like we detect all of the test cases with artificial intelligence and stuff like that, for me that's marketing. And I wanted to point out like, hey, if that marketing would be true, then we wouldn't need testing anymore. And we wouldn't need software development anymore, because we would have this general AI where I can just tell, hey, I need a software that solves the following problem, and it would be perfect. It would just work. So if I do have an artificial intelligence that can actually test for the intended use of an application, I can actually use that AI to tell them, generate a software that behaves like what I need for the use of this application. And that is why I said, like, if all of those marketing slogans are right, then we don't need testing anymore. We don't need software development anymore. We actually don't need you anymore, because you gave out the general AI that we were looking for, and that was more or less the reason why I wrote that article and said, like, guys, stop with those marketing statements, because it doesn't make much sense. It's like a buzzword for me. I learned it the hard way. I never used any buzzwords before, and now I'm talking about visual twins, artificial intelligence, and all of that stuff. It's like, yeah, you have to survive. It's a red ocean somehow.
So 3 years down the line from that article, has your perspective on AI and testing changed?
No, not at all. Honestly, I don't see the benefits that everybody is seeing in artificial intelligence for testing. I just don't see them. I'm trying to work with all of those tools. I'm trying to work with how's it called, digital artificial intelligence suite, whatever. And I try to play with test AI, and all of that stuff. And all I see is, one, we generate a model automatically. Yeah, congratulations. We have algorithms for that already since a long time. The problem is how to identify the real use case scenarios, and that is different for every different application. And the second one is image recognition. That is what I see in artificial intelligence, and it works for that. I mean, if you look at test AI, you can tell them, hey, press the shopping cart button, and it will find the shopping cart button, independent of how it looks in that specific application. But that is an isolated domain where it works. And if you do have complex systems like the one running behind, you need to train your artificial intelligence every single time. And there are new players around that actually claim, like, hey, we humanize testing. That's also nice. We humanize testing based on visual AI. And all they do is, like, they have some kind of object detection based on AI. And and you can actually look. You will see it in those videos that it cannot work. It's a lot of marketing, and in 3 years from now, it will still be the same. You can actually see it in Tesla. You see the progress with Tesla. They made a tremendous progress in the beginning, and I was at the I think it was the Agile Testing Day or Test Automation Day somewhere in the Netherlands, like a few years ago, and there was a key speaker from Tesla who showed me a street crossing from India somewhere. Sorry for that. It's like there were 16 lights next to each other. Some are higher than the others, and he actually said like, okay, so, and some had actually multiple red lights inside. And he actually asked the audience, is like, so when would you drive? It's like, it doesn't work like that. So there are a lot of lights, but you cannot identify when you drive. So in the end, everybody just tries to get into the middle of the crossing and then continues driving. And you can actually see that it works somehow, but there's not much progress. Yeah, people are cheering up if their Tesla doesn't go in the wrong direction anymore, if it doesn't take the wrong turn on one-way roads. It's amazing. It's honestly, I'm completely behind the technology, but you see that the progress is actually getting slower and slower, and that's the same for AI testing.
Yeah. Now I want to come back to the discussion around test automation.
Mm-hmm.
You've seen test automation move quite a bit over the years, from the standard record and playback days to where we have come now. We are going back towards that again.
Yeah.
Now, when you've seen such an evolution, have you seen an evolution in the testers who are supposed to adopt uh, those changes or embrace those changes? And if you haven't seen those in changes in the testers, what is your advice for them?
Yeah, so did I see those changes in the testers? In some, I did. In some, I did. And some are just reluctant to use them as a tools. And that is why what I don't understand is, to be honest, it's not like, I guess it's wrong to say like everybody needs to do test automation. That's completely bullshit. I'm sorry for my French. But the thing is, like, it's like Bolton says, it's another tool on your tool chain, and you should use it if it fits, and that's the point. And I know testers in different projects that tell me, no, I will never do automation. That's not my job. I'm a tester, which is fine. But they do not evolve in like they do what they ever did, and that is a bit of a sad story. But then there are others that are eager to learn on all of that stuff, and they're eager to jump in. And actually, my product owner of Test Results IO is actually a tester, and he was doing all of those tests manually, which is fine, and he's still brilliant. I mean, you give him, and that's I don't know how he does it. It has to be some gut feeling or some special skills. It's like you give him a piece of software and he finds the problems. It's not that he wants to break the software. He just finds the problems by using it and can tell you that is what I did, and you can easily reproduce it. He's like a gift sent by God, to be honest. It's like it's amazing to see somebody like that. And even he evolved. He said, like, hey, if I can automate stuff, that's fine for me. So do I see the evolution in testers? For some, yes, for some, no. In general, honestly, I cannot tell you, because I'm in my bubble where everybody's moving to test automation. I can just see sometimes outside of my bubble and see like, okay, there are still people in those projects that actually reject to use an additional tool.
No. Okay, so since you mentioned you're in a bubble, let me try and give you a perspective that I have come across. Okay, so when I talk to a lot of these testers, especially the ones who have a prowess in test automation,
Mhm.
they are so keen on doing test automation. If you tell them, okay, you know what, we will think about automating this a little later. For now, just test this. And they clearly say, no, I don't want to do this. I only want to automate. Okay,
Yeah.
so this is a perspective that we have seen.
Yeah.
And there have been numerous hiring managers, and me also being in the capacity of a hiring manager, have experienced this, that when people come for interview, they can automate, but they cannot test.
Yeah.
This is a problem that I have seen. Have you seen something like this somewhere?
Yeah, that's coming back to my bubble. Actually, in my bubble, that is okay, isn't it? But yeah, I have seen that in projects as well, and I have seen that that is a problem because in the end, I mean, and we do have with customer projects the same problem. Is like if you just automate it, it's not testing. Or don't get me wrong, it is part of the testing. Let me say it like that. But you need to have a testing mindset, and that is what I tell everybody. Is like a testing mindset is different than a mindset of a developer. Because as a developer, you want to solve a problem, and as a tester, you want to actually check if a problem exists. And if somebody is coming like, I only do automation, I'm pretty sure he is already in this developer mindset. Is like, I just want to do this automation. I just want to get through that steps and have it automated, and then everything is fine. And I'm the most performant guy in or girl in the company. And that's not the case, I guess. And that's also what we see here inside is like, you need to run those tests manually. First, you test and explore the software, and after you've done that, actually, you identify the things where you can automate, because a lot of the stuff shouldn't be automated, to be honest. If it's something that you do I see it multiple times, like it's a marketing app which is on the market for 6 months. Would I automate stuff for that? Honestly, no, I wouldn't.
No.
Doesn't make much sense. I would do some crowd testing just to make sure that it runs on the different devices, and that's it. If somebody comes and says like, yeah, we need to automate that, naturally, I would sell him some licenses, but I would tell him you don't need that. But yeah, I've seen that, and I think that is the wrong, or can be the wrong mindset. Let's say it like that.
You used a very good word here, mindset. Now you were talking about your product owner uh, having some magic powers to
Yes,
find
yes.
those issues. It is actually the mindset which
Yeah,
is making him very different, making him think differently, think about the problems that are there.
yeah,
Look at the possibilities of how or where things can go wrong,
yeah.
rather than just believing that, okay, you know what, I have this and this is going to work absolutely fine, life is going to be hunky-dory. That's not the case always, right?
And I think that's you made a good point on believing that. That's the point. If you tell him something, actually he doesn't. I think he doesn't believe it, and that's a good
Yeah.
starting point. And that is a skill. Actually, that is a skill to see beneath. It's like okay, you told me this story, but does it hold true? Let's
Right.
see. That's yeah. I see it as a skill, because honestly, that's something, I don't know. Perhaps you can be trained on that. I don't know, but I haven't seen it much often. It's like I think it's also a character type. It's like you want to be there, you want to do that, you want to, and it's not playing around with the software. That's the funny part. It's really, it's like he's doing the same thing that everybody else does, but in a way where he looks also left and right and just tries it out. Again, it's not playing around, because he can give you retro steps afterwards. He can tell you, hey, I did this, that, and this, and it led to this result. And you can never do that in an automated fashion in the beginning. It's just impossible.
Yeah, I have a fun story that I can share with you and with the audience here.
Yeah.
So I was at a bar once with a bunch of my friends, and this guy came and he said, "Okay, so I want a small pack of whiskey." He said, "Okay." So I said, "Okay, that's 30 ml." So he came, and that guy came with a small, a thing, a small short glass or something like that. And he said, "Okay, here's your small whiskey." He said, "How do you know that is 30 ml?" Okay, so and I was like, "Oh, this guy's thinking like a tester now." So the waiter is claiming that to be 30 ml, but this guy is challenging him, saying, "How do you expect it to be 30 ml?" That's exactly the case, and that made me think. When I came home, I was looking at my bottle of water. This bottle of water.
Yeah.
It says 350 ml, and I was like, how can I be sure that this is 350 ml? I've got to make sure that the claim that is being made by this bottle or the manufacturers is actually true. And
Did
that
you
is what
measure
the
it,
tester
Rich?
might. I did. I did.
Okay, see.
I did, and I filled it to the brim. It was 335 ml. So yeah, it's not 350. It's 335.
But
They fall short.
your example actually is another brilliant story, because you can actually see the problem in that. If you do have this type of character, I mean, I can imagine that guy sitting in the bar, the waiter getting to him, and he asked like, "How do you know that it's 30 ml?" I think that's not the way how you make friends.
Yeah, I know.
And
I
and
know.
and and, and, and that's the point. That's another big problem, isn't it? But yeah, that is that story is amazing because of that. It clearly points out, okay, you need to live with that. If you are a tester, you
Yeah,
just need to live with that problem.
yeah. In the meantime, there is a question for you, or it's a comment. I don't know. Automation is expensive, so it becomes an investment. So there is a pressure of return on investment. But the management hardly cares if they are ready to automate in the first place. That's something no one asks until they hit failure.
Yeah,
What are your thoughts?
yeah, that's true. That is a true statement. The thing is, the same was true like 12, 15 years ago about Scrum. So everybody pushed Scrum to development, and back then actually we had to learn how to identify if the team is ready for Scrum. And that's exactly the same for automation. Before you start with an automation project, you need to set some readiness milestones. You need to say like, are we ready for automation? I actually came to customers that wanted to buy test results.io, and I said like, okay, so do you have test systems where you can run it on? And they said like, yeah, we have those laptops. And I said, yeah, you have those laptops. Who is taking care of those laptops? Yeah, they are used. Yeah, okay, but that is not how you can use them for automation. So I know everybody tells you that, but that is part of the hard story. Is like you need to be the one that has enough trust in the company that you can stand there and tell them, hey, I'm happy to do that, but we need to fulfill the following gates before we start with that. And that is part of me being a consultant back in the days where you actually get paid to say stuff like that. You can just say like, hey, I've been in 15 companies, I've seen the same problem over and over and over again. And you will ask me those questions in 5 months from now. And I can tell you, we need to have the gate. Before we start with the automation, we need to be sure that we are ready for the automation. And there is a minimum checklist that we need to fulfill. And otherwise, we cannot start with the automation. It's a brilliant idea to do automation. And I'm with you that it's a requirement to do automation these days because we have a lot of regression tests and we need to automate whatever we can. Should be automated, that's fine. But right now, I don't see that we are ready for automation. And the reasons why is that we do not have the test environments ready for that. Or the reason is we do not have the skills. I mean, if we don't have the skills in-house, what should we do? Because the worst thing is that you get 3 consultants doing the test automation, they vanish 3 months later or 5 months later, and you should maintain something. And then the management is coming to you and tells you, well, it was all working fine the last 5 months. Why doesn't it work now that you took over? And those are problems that actually bite back. So you should stand there and fight your ground. But that being said, I know it's hard. And that is why I usually say like, hey, you need to build up trust with the management first, and then people will start listening to you. And we had that in the beginning about those dashboards. It's like you need to be the one that they listen to, that they come to ask for advice, actually.
So, how do you show the value of testing or
Yeah.
test automation to your management?
Yeah, that is a brilliant question, isn't it? And if I find out a 1 or 2 sentence answer to that, I guess I can make a lot of money. The problem in testing is like, and I guess everybody can relate to that, is if you are doing a good job, why does it need you? If you're doing a bad job, why does it need you? So if it doesn't need you in one or the other case, why does it need you? And I think the only argument about value is actually that we extend that to valuation. It's like if we are talking about return of invest, when is the return of invest of an automated testing, or when is the return of invest of testing at all? Is it if we do not find more than $5 per month in the field? There are metrics like that, but it doesn't make any sense at all. So the thing is, what you need to point out is like, what is, for example, the brand valuation? So how much would it cost us actually if something happens? Like, for example, a good company, I guess, where you have open doors if you talk about testing, is Boeing these days. They learned it the hard way that testing is required. You cannot just trust some engineers that say, hey, we put the engine a bit higher or a bit closer to the body, and it will still work without any additional changes. Everybody learned that lesson in the world now. And I think it's more about this. It's about brand valuation. It's about customer satisfaction. It's more about things that are measurable in a way, but not directly. So if somebody asks me what is my value as a tester or as a test automation engineer, it is like, what kind of value do you want to see? Because that's why are you asking that question in the first place? Is it about trust? Is it a trust issue? Do you think that I'm not doing my job correctly, or what is the problem? It's like, do you not think that I contribute to this project? And again, that doesn't need to be that I'm testing. As I said at the beginning, I actually brought testers into the role of a Scrum Master, and the project was the most successful one in that company the last 10 years. And you can claim that on all of the stuff, but I think one of the key pieces was that tester being the Scrum Master, because he had a completely different approach to acceptance criteria. And that's the important part to success. So how do I explain the value to management? Is like, do you want to have happy customers, or do you just want to have someone that is using your software and generating a lot of support calls? You can only use some values that are already there to explain the value of your work. I didn't find any other solution. If you have any other solutions, please let me know. Put it in the comments, put it in the chats. Rich, what is your way of thinking on that?
Well, I quite agree with you that it depends on what the other person is trying to see in you in terms of a value. But I have always believed in one thing, that as testers, our role may be to point out to problems or to figure out what is working, what's not working, collect more information, give it to the stakeholders. But in doing so, we do have a lot of value. We do add a lot of value in terms of being able to point out to problems which nobody else has thought about.
Yeah.
For example, risks. My way of thinking is, all defects are actually potential risks. If they go to the customer, things may blow up. So
Yeah.
you are detecting those early. You are making sure that okay, you put it forth, and then people come up with a mitigation plan, fixes for those defects, and it is solving a lot of problems for the customers. So that's where you are showing your value. Okay, so if I have to go to the management and talk about what value a tester is bringing, I'll talk to them in terms of, seeing risks early. I will talk to them about discovering the unknown, which
Yeah.
a lot of people, don't focus on. I will come to that as a part of my next question. But the most important thing is test automation. Okay, so when you are talking about test automation, the general mindset that I have seen across the industry, and I may be wrong here, is okay, let's convert a bunch of manual test cases to scripts that a computer can run. But that is just a limited view of automation. What automation can do is, you spoke about dashboards. You know, these dashboards, they can all be automated, right? You can have your scripts take care of those. You can have your test data, which is the biggest problem in my mind. There are a lot of challenges where, in situations, for example, I was testing this uh, ERP application where data which you use once, you cannot reuse it.
Yeah.
So every time for a new test, you have to create fresh data,
Mhm.
and that data has to be accurate enough or production like, so
Yeah.
that you get accurate results, which means that you have a problem of generating test data at will. How
Mhm.
much can you rely on tools which generate data for you? So you automate and you build an automated test data management system yourself. That is also test automation for
Yeah.
me. Yeah. So one of our friends, good friends, Soumya Mukherjee, he tells a very nice thing. He says, in Excel, we write a bunch of numbers in a column, and then put them together and hit that, or just type is equal to sum of this
Mhm.
column to this column. That is an example of automation.
Yeah.
So and that should open a lot of people's eyes, thinking about automation. So when I talk to the management, I talk to them in these terms, in terms of adding efficiency to the tests, in terms of adding more you know freedom to the testers to go and explore the unknown. That's what I talk about. So that's my view.
And how do they value that actually? Do they say like, okay, we see that there might be some risks, but how do you make sure that you will actually find those risks?
Well, so you have to, again, your point, trust. You have to trust me to do that job. Okay, you've hired me as a tester or a test consultant. You have to trust my instincts. So
Yeah.
if I tell you, then I will do a risk storming exercise for them and say, okay, I will invite you to a risk storming exercise. Let's see how that goes. You will be the one who will be spilling out the risks. Then they'll be like, oh, okay, how is that possible? And I have done that. I called the entire team into a meeting. I said, okay, you are locked in this room for the next 3 hours. Okay, and there are like 35, 40 of them. And
Mhm.
I'm like, so now each one of you has to think from your perspective, what could go wrong in
Mhm.
the project or in the product.
Mhm.
Okay, from your perspective, you don't have to think about what a developer is thinking. You are a product owner. Think like a product owner, and tell me what could go wrong. Okay, and then by the end of those 3 hours, we had like 75 risks listed down. Everybody talking about it from their perspective. I said, see, then it was a different task of prioritizing. That was a different story altogether.
And that's interesting. Perhaps that is a good approach because that's exactly what you do in regulated markets, isn't it? You do a failure
Exactly.
mode risk assessment and you have everybody involved in that and see like, hey, what happens if this happens? What is the visibility if that happens? What is the probability of that occurrence and stuff like that? And perhaps true, that might be a good approach actually to show your value is like doing one of those risk analyzes, risk assessments. Like there are different approaches. There's a FMIA approach and others as well,
Yeah.
and then you can actually show the value because it's then about like, okay, how do you mitigate those risks today? And that is where I as a tester can actually help you to mitigate
Exactly.
those.
Exactly.
Perhaps that is actually a good tool to actually show, yeah, where the benefit of automation and also testing is.
Exactly. And this brings me to my next question, and I was talking about in the previous response. So when we are talking about testing in general, when we are talking about uh, you know, there is a lot of focus. There is a lot of focus on, hey, let's convert this bunch of test cases from manual to automation, and we are done.
Mm.
Now, how do I get out of that mindset and think of automation holistically? Start thinking about automation end to end, because I will tell you why I'm asking you this question.
Mhm.
When you talk about benefits of automation and you
Mhm.
ask any test engineer, one of the first answers that you get is regression.
Mhm.
Okay, accepted. Okay, it's easy because you have to repeat the task. You need to automate stuff. What about progressive automation?
So what do you mean by
Right?
progressive automation?
Meaning for my, I can use automation for my regression tests. I
Mhm.
can use automation for my progression tests. That is the tests that are ongoing right now.
Yeah.
Okay, for example, in sprint automation, that is an example of progression automation. Like
Mhm.
in the current sprint time, if I'm able to automate, right? So if I'm thinking about automation, I'm not just thinking about regression. I'm thinking about it holistically,
Mhm.
and that's what I like to understand from people as to uh, what is happening. So, what is your take on that?
Yeah, it's another good question. The thing on that is like because you mentioned the word sprint, and that is some kind of trigger word already for me, like Scrum as well.
Okay,
It's
assuming we are doing Scrum. Okay, okay,
exactly, that's
yeah,
the next
yeah,
trigger word
yeah,
because a
yeah,
lot
yeah.
of
No, let me clarify the context.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
assuming
fine.
we are doing Scrum. Yeah,
We the problem is a lot of companies actually claim that they are agile, but they are not. That's the first problem, isn't it? And you cannot
yeah,
bring that in. The next problem that is, I think there's a fatal flaw is like that you say you need those T-shaped specialists where you are the specialist in one area, but you are still a generalist, so you know all of the stuff. I think that's difficult. So that you need to have a good team setup and you need to have brilliant people. So I use Scrum as a tool actually to identify who fits into a good team. And once I do have my team, we actually switch the way of doing it. But progressive testing is something that I would love to see more adopted. To be honest, it's something that you think most of the people always tell you like that cannot be done in an automated fashion, and I say no, that's not true. We do have you. For example, some of the people use Figma to do prototypes, and you can just start test automation on those prototypes. And if you do it visually, actually, all you do is afterwards you change a few of those visual cue elements that you have, and can run the exact same test against the final version. And that is what you can actually do, because you can do the preparation of the automation, but you can also do the exploratory testing at the same point in time, because it's step by step by step. So do the exploratory stuff, and afterwards you can start automating based on the prototype. And that is actually what if I understood you right, what you would call progressive automation.
yes,
And then again, you are right in every point if you say like automation is more than testing. It's like test data generation, stuff like that. And also identifying the right test cases. As I said, I don't trust in AI, but I do trust in math. And there are a few good statistical models that you can actually use to identify problematic areas if you do have the right input. And before anybody comes up with a comment, I do know that AI is also based on math. Don't get me wrong on that. It's more or less like it's like the hype around the marketing around artificial intelligence that actually brings me to the point to say like don't use AI. That's all.
yeah, yeah. Well, there is a question for you, which is a
Okay.
little long, but anyways, here we go. As a QA, one needs to figure out parameters to rate the build every release. There should be point system for each parameter. For example, was the performance testing done? Were error scenarios handled for this feature? Was documentation done? What I mean is even involve parameters that stakeholders need to perform.
Mhm.
And then QA should give a final rating. What are your thoughts on this approach?
I love it. Honestly, I love it. Because that is actually true. You test the software, but there's so much more. There are release notes around it. There are documentations around it. What is the quality of those documentations? The problem is I have never seen that in real life, to be honest. I love the approach, but I've not seen anyone who is buying into that. But if you can do that, that would be brilliant.
I can give you an example. So I was speaking to one of our good friends, Prashant
Mhm.
Hegde, who's an engineering manager with Moengage in Bangalore, and he mentioned that they actually did a bug bash
Mhm.
on the documentation for the product.
Mhm.
And they found a bunch of defects. Everybody testing the documentation,
Yeah.
just the documentation, and they found a bunch of defects which when rectified could solve a lot of problems for the customers. So you're
Yeah.
absolutely right, Samrat, you're absolutely right. This is a good approach, and like Tobias said, I mean,
Yeah, and
I would.
I can tell you why I love that approach actually. Once I started with one of those companies, I was actually a unit tester, and they gave me a software detail design. So they had requirements, specifications, software detail design documents, and test cases, test reports, and all of that controlled like in a V model. And they gave me the software detail design and told me to write unit tests based on that because that is the process. And like after 2 days, I told them actually, sorry, the code doesn't behave like your software detail design says it should behave. So I can write unit tests because I do see the code, but I cannot write them based on the software detail design. It doesn't make any sense. So the documents need to be updated, or you need to change the code to match the documents. I honestly, I don't care, but right now there's a mismatch, and I can tell you what is right and what is wrong. And therefore, I can only say like, yeah, if you have the chance to build up something like that, a system like that, then I would even love to have a dashboard actually where you see the different stakeholders and you see the green lights between after each of those names and say like, yeah, we can all agree that the release is ready.
Yes, I think that's a great suggestion from Samrat, and what I like about that question is how he has broken up the different pieces of the build rather than
Yeah.
looking at it just as a build. Look at the various minute details of that and go and look at it holistically rather than just looking at it from one part.
Yeah.
Well,
And it's also getting the whole picture, isn't it? Like if we talk about testing or
yes.
software, it's always like, oh, it's the software that we test. But there's so much more around the software till it works for the customer. And that is what is usually not being tested at all, at least in my experience here.
Yeah. So we've just crossed the top of the hour. Is it okay if we go on for a few more minutes,
Sure.
Tobias?
Sure.
Okay, because I have a few questions up my sleeve, and the audience may also come up with some. Okay. So well, Samrat says thank you. So that was a good question, Samrat.
Yeah, thanks for the question and thanks for the input, actually, Samrat.
That's a brilliant idea. Actually, a lot of other people can learn from that and
Yeah.
start implementing that
Yeah.
thought process. So now I want to go step a little away from testing and go into something that you had told me in one of our previous discussions. I know you have this liking for doing reaction videos. So have you done any? Sorry for spilling the beans, but have you done any recently?
No. Actually, my marketing team wants me to do a few more Tosca challenge videos. So I first need to do
Ah,
those. It's a kind of reaction video actually where I show like, hey, if that is a hard problem for your tool, perhaps it might be the wrong tool. So that's my way of a silent reaction. But I'm actually looking forward to that because I see it in the fashion industry, I see it in a lot of different industries, and it's fun. So that is still my plan to do that. And yeah, latest by end of this year, I guess I will start with doing some of those reaction videos.
good.
If you actually, if anybody in the audience knows any interesting YouTube videos where you would see like my reaction on it, just let us know and we can do that earlier.
I will. I have a bunch of videos in my mind. I'd like to see your reaction to it because I had a good time laughing about those videos. So, but I want to see your perspective. Well, so talking about those Tosca challenges, I I saw one. Was it in preparation for test bash or I don't know what,
Oh
but
yeah, yeah.
you did one recently, and I saw that video. So how did you come up with the idea of doing these Tosca challenges?
We were just browsing the web and found that obstacle course list, and it was funny because it said like you can become the automation master if you solve all of those obstacles and stuff like that. And I just want to make fun out of it and say like, hey, okay, if that is what an automation master needs to do, let's try it and let's become an automation master then. And we went through those challenges and looked at them and said like, okay, if any of those are a problem or if they are hard to solve, yeah, I don't know. Then you should look into your test automation, to be honest, because it's like we are in 2022. soon we are in 2023. Stuff like that should be easy. I mean, entering or selecting some elements in a list box or stuff like that, or having duplicate entries in a table and you need to find the right one is like that should be an obstacle, to be honest, and it's called an obstacle. That is how I came up with that. And afterwards, actually, that sparked the interest in doing challenges. And then I saw a few challenges on LinkedIn on shadow dome elements embedded in an iframe and stuff like that, which is why do you even care about those technical details? Can you just enter the text in the text field? And that went even further. And then I did some additional videos actually for cooperation that will come out in, like, I guess in a few weeks from now, where I actually show that how you can do that, because there are always the same questions. It's like if you have a table just out of diffs, how do you actually test that with all of those adapters and stuff like that? And it's pretty tricky if you do it technically, but if you do it in a visual way, it's always the same stuff, because you just identify the table and go through them, and that's it. And for the test bash, I honestly somehow I ended up I was stalking Richard, I guess, and at some point I just ended up on that test batch automation challenge, and just found it interesting, and said like, hey, okay, more or less that is not much more than doing a few interactions and doing some visual comparisons. Right. And I actually, the interesting part is I looked at all of the other videos and I said like, okay, how did you solve the challenge? It's like there's one video where a guy is taking a screenshot of it and said like, hey, I solved everything because I said like there is a 95% confidence. It's like if 5% of the image changed, that's still fine for me. But it might be exactly the thing that you're looking for that is changing. So what does that test actually prove? It proves that it passes if nothing changes. But does it fail in the right moment? It's like, I mean, automation, it always looks trivial if you just do a demo and click through it, but that's not testing. That is just, that's power. That's like access in the 80s, in the 90s, isn't it? It's like you just use something easy. And
it's not testing, it's demonstration. You're demonstrating that it works.
Exactly, but the thing is, it gets interesting if things change. So after you automated it, things are changing. It's like, okay, now I do have the problem. Does it detect that? And now I changed something and it doesn't have the problem. It should still work. Does it still work? Stuff like that. I mean, that's the important part on it. And I think only 4 or 5 additional entries were done on that specific challenge. I think that's the only reason I got selected, because it was so many. It was so less actually. And all of them had somehow a strange way of doing it, because specifically at the visual comparison, they just took a screenshot of the whole screen, and of some of them you can actually see like one took 18 minutes, and after 14 minutes he found out that actually the scrolling was not further down enough, so that the thing was not visible, and said like, hey, that should be stuff that is out of the box. Why do you care 14 minutes that you scroll to the right position? How can that be in 2022? It doesn't make any sense to me, but apparently that is state of the art. So and that actually closes the circle. Why in the beginning you asked like, why did we come up with another tool in an ocean of tools? Because I do have a feeling that most of those tools do not solve today's problems. It's like somebody was sitting there and thinking in the blue, like, how would we do test automation if we would do it? And some developers thought like, hey, we would do it like this and that's it, but they never use it afterwards. And whenever you use those tools and think like, hey, why is it that complex? Think about my words, and it doesn't need to be like that, to be honest. Yeah. There are always complex scenarios, for sure, definitely. And there are always the exceptions, for sure, as well. But most of the stuff that you see these days as obstacles or challenges is like, it shouldn't be that way. And that is one of the reasons.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree. And for the audience, I will leave a link to some of those videos from Tobias for you to look at as to how he has been solving those challenges. I love watching those. I
want to invite everyone to actually send us challenges, send us obstacles that you are struggling with. Send us the stuff, and that is actually how we all grow. Is actually having those challenges and see how they can be solved easily.
You gave me a nice idea. I thought, okay, after looking at some of those challenges about how other people have solved it and then how you solved it, I was like, okay, I should do a reaction video on these, other people solving. And then,
That's interesting.
and
Honestly, Bridge, I was so close to do a reaction video on the one video that was 18 minutes and 22 seconds. It's like I
yeah,
wanted to put
yeah,
my video, my face into that video and say like, hey, so the last 12 minutes you tried to scroll, and now you just take a screenshot, and if anything of those parameters change, it's that is a definition of a flaky test.
yeah, yeah. Uh, well, I don't have any words, but I will probably do something like that. Take your
Yeah.
videos and do a reaction video on those.
That's that's also fine. We can also take other videos and do actually you can do a reaction video and I follow up with a reaction video to the reaction video, isn't it?
No, but it's really interesting to see how different people have different thought processes around those challenges what they
Yeah.
pose. But some of those challenges, I feel you're absolutely right. They are not meant for problems that we see in 2022. They're like, you are still stuck in the 90s trying
Yeah.
to think about problems that have been solved already and then trying to create a problem out of it.
Yeah. That's
Nevertheless,
yeah.
nevertheless, I want to come towards my closing questions, and this is more towards a problem that not a problem, but a situation that we are in right now. So more and more companies claim that they are embracing DevOps. Okay, I'm not saying that they are doing, but they claim that they are embracing DevOps, and they speak about jargons like CI/CD pipeline and this and that, and a lot of that is going on in the industry. So, from a testresults.io perspective, how easy it is to have that as a part of your pipeline, and what benefits do I see as a engineering manager of having testresults.io in my CI/CD pipeline?
Yeah, there's one big benefit. You don't need to install anything on your agents, so on your build agents or in your pipeline. That I think that is the biggest benefit. Usually, if you have any of those test tools, you need to install some runner or some driver, or you need to install the whole fat client on the system, on your build system, and your build system should actually be lean. It should, in the end, it should actually be a Docker container somewhere, or whatever kind of container, sorry for that, and you could just run it up and build your system and bring it down again. And I think that's the main benefit of test results here is like it's a separate system, completely cloud-based, or also in your private cloud on premise, and you can just interact with it from your CI/CD pipeline. So, I mean, CI/CD means continuous integration and continuous deployment, and we need to be sure about that. Test results IO is not for continuous integration. That is your build system. So you check in code and you do your unit test and you get your unit test results. But afterwards, you have the continuous deployment part where you actually package up a release, and before you deploy it, you put in actually test results IO and say like, okay, I deployed on a test system, run all of those tests against those test systems, if possible, scale it up to whatever is required to run all test cases at the same point in time, because I want to have the results as soon as possible, and bring it back to my CI/CD pipeline. And that's it. And the interesting part is because you said like a lot of companies claim they are doing DevOps. And I actually see that out there that they are actually doing CI/CD. So they do actually have a build pipeline. If it's fully automated or not, don't need to talk about that. But at least you see that it's coming, and it's already settled in big enterprises. There are teams that are not doing it. It's also coming to smaller shops. So I think that is really something that helps the build quality. To be honest, in comparison, that I built a system on my PC and it works on my PC, which is I think of the past, hopefully.
Yeah, and this brings to actually my final question, and this is purely on testresults.io's capability. So when we talk about end-to-end testing,
Hmm.
okay, Michael Bolton, in one of his recent keynotes that he gave, I think it was at Eurostar, where he mentioned, uh, you know, there is a human at both ends of the end-to-end test, right?
Hmm.
There is one who's starting the test, and there is one who's going to reap the benefits of the test at the other end. So how does the end-to-end testing in testresults.io cater to the human at both ends?
Yeah. So let's say to the one who is using it afterwards, the benefit is clear. It's like it's the typical automation benefit is like you can do more exploratory testing in end to end because you automated all of your checks. So
Yes.
and that is the benefit for the one in the beginning of the chain is like they actually can use more of their gut feeling, more of their skills, because all of the repetitive checks are implemented in test results. But that's actually true for all of the automation tools, if they can do end-to-end tests. And that is one of the major challenges is actually that you really need to support all of the different systems, like creating accounts somewhere. And then most of the problems that I see in end-to-end testing is small things like getting back a short message, getting back an email with an activation code. So how do you do that if you have only a visual approach? It's pretty difficult. And that is why we also do API testing and have second channel testing and stuff like that. So the integrations on that one is actually extremely important, but you can do that in a visual way as well. But as you ask for the benefits, I would say like the benefits to the one starting the test on the one side and doing the test on the one side is actually that you have more time to do exploratory to end to end as well, because all of the redundant stuff is done automatically. And to the one of the other side, fingers crossed, I hope the quality gets better. and that's,
Well,
by
of
the way,
course,
that's a false assumption, isn't it? Because just because we test, the quality doesn't get better. It's
yes.
that's just a myth.
I, I was going to say that if testing could improve quality, we would be in a different planet altogether, right?
And Pritch, the thing is, and that is my vision, that testing can actually increase the quality if everybody would be testing. So
Yes.
and that's the point. We already tried that in projects as well, and you see it more and more, is like with having quality coaches in the team doing the testing, but also teaching everybody else actually how a tester approaches stuff. Like we spoke about the mindset, about, and I guess you cannot change the mindset of people, but you can give them some insights to different mindsets so that they understand on how a tester would do that. Even if they don't adopt it, that's fine. But they still have this understanding afterwards that like if we do XYZ in the code, that changes how it works, and we should actually not trust ourselves and try that out. It's difficult, but it can work out.
Yes, indeed.
That's
Well,
that's
that
that's, that's the whole point. And then testing would actually directly increase quality. Otherwise, it's just a measurement to say like, hey,
yeah.
where is the quality right now, and what are the measurements what are the measures to increase quality actually?
Yes. Well, thank you so much for your time first of all, and for those detailed answers, and for the fun that we have been having. I'm really looking forward to those reaction videos from you. So yeah, and for the audience, if you haven't tried out testresults.io, give it a shot. You will love it. I can tell you from my own personal experience. Okay, this is something different, something for you to explore, something for you to, take to your management and talk about. And like Tobias said, the approach to the whole, visual testing is quite different, and you will feel it once you start using it. I'm,
Yeah.
I'm not advertising, but I am just speaking based on my experience. Okay, but yeah, just give it a shot. It's easy, and you can reach out to Tobias. He
Yeah.
is very responsive, very quick in responding back. And for any questions that you may have, he will come back to you with a wonderful answer. Sometimes a very funny answer.
Yeah, bear with me. Bear with me. But hey, thanks for being here in the test chat. And if there are any other questions, I guess we can still take it. And it was an honor to be in here.
Yeah, so for any further questions, you could either reach out to me or to Tobias directly. Thank you so much for being a part of the live session today. I look forward to seeing you guys around in another episode of the What Lies Beneath Ask Me Anything. That's a wrap on today's episode. Thank you so much to Tobias and to the audience.
Okay, thanks to all of you. And thanks to you, Prich, for the invitation. And looking forward to your first reaction video. Perhaps this one is actually the perfect video actually to do the first reaction video on it.
I will do that. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure hosting you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.